what is that weird 4 letters? We'll get to that in a minute. This lesson tonight is about one more benefit of Christianity. But let us ask ourselves, what goal would this lesson help you with? It'll help you with your complaining. What? I think if we apply these principles, way over 50% of all complaining in households are gone. Is the solution easy to understand? Oh, yes, it's easy. Is the solution easy to follow? Well, you'll have to decide on that one. In fact, you already know the solution. Have you ever been deceived? I sure have. Did you ever want to be deceived? I don't remember having that attitude. You know, there's some people in our culture that seem like they want to be deceived. In fact, take a look at this tattoo. You got people who are proud of having the devil tattooed, where there's the devil speaking into their ear. Oh, it's worse than that. Take a look at this tattoo. Wow. They even put the tattoo inside the ear. And the sad thing is, maybe guys are that stupid, but I don't expect females to get into this. Take a look at her. She's got the devil speaking into her ear. What an attitude. But most Americans have been deceived unknowingly. But especially by 2 waves of deception in the 1960s and the 1980s. If we have time, we'll elaborate on those 2 waves. But ask ourselves, have we been deceived? We know our goal is heaven. We want to climb the ladder, right? The true ladder. But there's only one ladder, yet we want our family, our friends, our associates, people we study with, we want them to join us on that ladder to heaven. Those other ladders, they're just dead ends. This lesson is about one subject, just one principle, where some of us have gotten the wrong ladder more than once. We've made the mistake of getting on the wrong ladder? Yeah. The Bible tells us how to recognize the wrong ladder, and it tells us how to get on the right ladder. You see, there's a lot of ladders that Satan, he's up there, the snake, okay? Satan wants us to climb. Come on up, come on up. And yes, in your notes, GOWL stands for get off the wrong ladder. And then we need to get on the right ladder. Steps to success. How many books are out there trying to show you how to take the steps to success? Who drew these maps to success? They probably don't realize it, but essentially the devil informed them, okay? He's the one behind these drawings. You need to do this to be successful. Yeah. Deceived by Satan, whether you knew it or not. Well, what does the world teach about climbing the steps to success? They don't teach the right things, do they? In fact, they'll teach you the ladder to riches. One of the things the ladder to riches equals to, everyone knows this, it's the ladder to happiness. Well, at least that's according to the commercials, the movies, the ads. It's on all of them, and it's saturated. Money will make you happy. The love of money actually leads to misery and personal failure. Don't you find it ironic that just in the last year, 2 of the world's richest men, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, can't even keep their wives happy? You think they got enough money? Yeah. Both getting divorced. You see, if sharing $100 billion will not make you happy, that sure shows the rest of us that money will not make you happy. So what are some of Satan's wrong ladders? Well, if making money is your goal, ask yourself, does making money glorify God or glorify you? If making sports your goal, does excelling in sports glorify you or glorify God? Maybe you want a new house. We need a bigger, nice house. Okay, well, will that glorify God or glorify you? What about romance? Is romance your goal? That's what all these romance books that sold all over the country and the movies and things of that nature. Romance must be the goal of people. Well, what happens to those men who are rich? Don't they oftentimes have what you see up there, a trophy wife? She looks good on their arm, okay? While she's reaching in for the credit cards and everything else, right? Ask yourself, when you got married, was your wife there to help you glorify God or to make you look good? And besides, Hollywood, they can't keep their own wives happy, so why would we believe the romance in their movies? We shouldn't. Where did children learn about romance? Well, oftentimes from the movies, but wait a second. Hollywood, they're the type people would do those stupid tattoos, right? They're listening to Satan. Well, stop climbing on their ladders. So how does the media, how do they portray important people? Well, surely the people who are more important are the ones being served. So the served ones are better than the serving, right? No, wrong ladder. You see, Jesus taught his disciples that serving was greater than being served. The world doesn't teach that. In Matthew chapter 20, but Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles, listen to this phrase, lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Remember that word over, it's going to be important. Yet it shall not be among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Gary's lesson last week mentioned the rich and the poor, the wrong ladder and the right ladder. Jesus in Matthew 5 did not say, blessed are the rich. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, the humble. This lesson is about the wrong ladder called self-esteem. Self-esteem, isn't that a good thing? Philippians 2, verses 3 and 5. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit. What does the word conceit mean? Well, in the Greek, it just means self-esteem. Also notice its synonyms: vain glory, groundless, empty pride. And if that's not enough, just keep reading the verse. But in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better. Does it sound like, yeah, they're supposed to be over you, right? Better than himself. Who thinks they're more important? This illustration. High esteem, esteeming themselves well, okay, is when the rich passenger demands respect from this poor taxi driver. Why? Because of their differences in maybe money or differences in titles. But on Judgment Day, they're both going to stand before God, aren't they? Yeah. Who else has high self-esteem? Do you ever realize that there's a lot of people out there who have little to offer, like this lazy, unskilled, welfare dependent, who thinks he's more important than most others, and therefore he thinks he's entitled to be treated with respect? Try doing an internet search. I'm looking for pictures and images, right? When I tried to find something on high self-esteem, practically everything was positive. And oftentimes the word respect was part of their images or their text. But God wants even the brain surgeon to treat the taxi driver as more important than himself. Here's a quote I like. Low self-esteem has nothing to do with what you know, what you can do, what we possess, how we are honored, political power, money in the bank, or the hundreds of people you may employ. Low self-esteem is the attitude of God on earth, serving all others as more important than ourselves. Jeremiah 9, 23 through 24, thus says the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, let not the mighty man glory in his might, nor let the rich man glory in his riches, but let him who glories, not glorying in themselves, are they? Glory in this, that he understands and knows me. 2 Timothy 3, 1 and 2. In the last day, men will be lovers of self. Wow. We're living in the last days. This has been going on for a long time, okay? Then you got Romans 11, 1 Timothy 6. It talks about do not be conceited, but fear. That little Greek word again, conceited. Proud, high-minded. James 4:6, God resists the proud. What's the Greek word for proud? Its primary meaning is showing oneself, remember what I said earlier, above others, overtopping, conspicuous above others, preeminent. Society loves all those things, don't they? So-and-so's preeminent over somebody else. Yeah. Keep reading the verse, though. It said, but God gives grace to the humble. Comes from a Greek word that literally means, primary definition, not rising far from the ground of low degree. I think all will agree that at least 8 of the following sins include self-esteem, or at least are due to it. Let's read. 2 Timothy 3, perilous times. For men will be lovers of themselves. That sounds like high self-esteem, doesn't it? Lovers of money, boasters. Well, that sounds like high self-esteem. Proud. Yeah, we got high self-esteem. Blasphemers, disobedient to parents. Oh, you mean children when they're being disobedient to parents or being prideful and thinking they deserve? Oftentimes that's the case. Unthankful, oftentimes due to self-esteem. Unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong. Yeah. Haughty, they kind of think highly of themselves, right? Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. So let's compare. Let's compare self-esteem, which essentially means I deserve, with being humble. Well, humble, when you go to the Greek, you got definitions in there like pious, modest mind, prefers to bear injury rather than return them. How you doing on that one? Someone insults you, does something bad to you, whatever else. Is that your response? Well, I prefer to bear injury rather than return. That's a tough one to be humble, isn't it? It also mentions being an unassuming matter. Be careful about your assumptions. Jesus was the definition of humility. Yes, he preferred to bear injury rather than return them. Yes, he submitted himself. And yes, he was allowed himself to be taken and tortured as if like not rising far from the ground. Luke 23, he even said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. How much more humble of a reaction than you want than that? Yeah. But let's just imagine. Let's imagine that Jesus was not humble. So there he is on the cross. Father, I deserve respect from these people. He does deserve respect. That's not his attitude, was it? I want revenge. Can't they see how important I am? That was not his attitude, was it? Even though he was the most important person on the planet. You see, the idea of high self-esteem leads to that idea of I deserve. Self-assertive, be careful, because that leads to I expect. How do you keep the two from going together? You really can't. High self-esteem basically means I'm worth so much that I deserve, and then just fill in the blank, you deserve more. What about low self-esteem? It says I deserve less. Or I esteem others more than myself. Isn't that what Christ did? Low self-esteem could also mean I esteem others as more important than my present circumstances. Isn't that what we call the Good Samaritan? He was on a journey. He had a trip. He had someplace to go. He stopped everything he's doing, took care of this man, took care of him at an inn the whole night, the next day, paid for everything else. Didn't he have something better to do? He thought that man's circumstances were above his. Proverbs, you might think, well, is it okay to have self-confidence? Be careful. Proverbs 14:16, a wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool rages and is self-confident. I thought this world wants you to be self-confident. We want kids to be brought up self-confident. Let's get away from that. Let's try a different phrase and define it. How about let's use the phrase God-competent? God confidence. And we'll define it this way. God made me, so I am confident His word and His providence can guide me. Or with the skills and opportunity God provides, I can do, and just fill in the blank. We need to beware of relying on ourselves as the basis for our confidence. Low self-esteem is being unassuming. Humble is defined as being unassuming. Yet how many times have you assumed, you've gotten upset because you assumed you'd get different results? Or you assume you deserve different results? How should a Christian view self-esteem? What's the foundation of knowledge? The foundation of knowledge, the foundation of wisdom is the fear of God. Does anybody in here think the psychiatry industry, the mental health industry uses the fear of God as the foundation of their knowledge? No. They wrongly focus on self-esteem and use therapy methods that are opposed to what the Bible actually says. Let me give you an example. This author is the head of a Bible college counseling department. In his book, which was called The Biblical View of Self-Esteem, Self-Love, and Self-Image, he says this, I believe on page 47. The psychiatry industry believes low self-esteem causes mental illness. Yeah? When in fact the opposite is true. The psychiatry industry has had such an influence on society since the 1960s that the concept of self-esteem is seen as being the truth like the law of gravity. I got 30 pages of notes, folks. You find those type things in their literature all over the place. Low self-esteem is bad for you. Liberals, non-believers, and Bible-believing Christians alike are caught up in the self-esteem movement. This is the #1 social psychology journal. Out of 60-some journals, they're #1. Notice what they said. While self-esteem among Americans' youth has been on the rise, remember that. I want you to remember that for later. Youth, the self-esteem was on the rise for 30 years. Accomplishment and responsible decision-making has been on the decline. Children, can you believe this? Children are awarded sports trophies for showing up. One author said, my daughter went off to some sports competition and came back with a trophy for 14th place. Did you know you can actually go out and buy trophies, even 24 at a time now? They're cheap. After they're given out. If they're giving out so many, I guess you've got to make them cheap for the demand, right? A Massachusetts school district ordered children in gym class to skip rope without ropes. Why would they do that? Lest they suffer self-esteem catastrophe of tripping. Okay. Scientific American, 2001, I believe it was April, in this article. Notice the title of the article. Violent Pride. Well, the conclusion is not surprising, okay? People with high self-esteem tend to have low self-control. Yeah. Who had high self-esteem in the Bible? The Pharisee in Luke chapter 18, right? I mean, look at what he said. God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, even as this tax collector. I tithe, I do this, I do that. What did Jesus say? He said, this man, the tax collector, the one who was humbled, the one who didn't even consider himself worthy to look up towards heaven. He said, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. The Pharisee had the exact type of positive self-image, self-esteem, that the mental health industry teaches and what is being taught to our children. Look at this guy. Read the caption. My counselor fixed my low self-esteem problem. Now I'm amazing. He's been conned by Satan, folks. Have we? Where did the origins of this positive self-esteem movement come from? 1890s. Started that long ago? Yeah. It came out of the world of pagan, atheistic, humanistic, evolutionary psychiatry. Even Wikipedia thinks this is positive, though. Okay, so they don't mind putting it in there. William James, 1890, self-love. That sounds good, doesn't it? Or Eric Fromm, unconditional love. Oh, that's got to be a positive, right? Carl Rogers, non-judgmental self-help. These men are famous. Most of them are dead. They now know they were wrong. Wait a second. We know people with suicide. We've been taught our whole lives that people who commit suicide is by people who have low self-esteem. Turns out to be the opposite. They think they deserve something they're not getting. That's why they want to commit suicide. I deserve more than this. I'll show them. They didn't treat me right. Oh, I'm just, this is just terrible conditions in life. I don't deserve this. The psychologists, when they studied the suicide, the psychologists have been taught it's low self-esteem. But they found out when they studied the actual people who had attempted suicide, they had high self-esteem. Who told these people that they deserve so much more? Remember I said earlier, remember that thing about the kids? Over the last 30 years, the self-esteem has gone up. So guarantee self-esteem must mean you think better of yourself. Low self-esteem means more suicides, so therefore kids are thinking better of themselves over the last 30 years. We must have less suicides. More suicides among the youth. High self-esteem has led to more suicides. Those with low self-esteem are well-adjusted people of the highest moral character. When bad stuff happens to people of low self-esteem, they accept it in stride and do not complain. Look at this. How the self-esteem craze took over America and why the hype was irresistible. Why is the hype irresistible? Read the caption up there. I want you to realize you're a wonderful, special person. Who doesn't like to hear they're a wonderful, special person? You take that? This author's trying to honor the Bible in some sense. He says the vast majority of people, especially the mental ill, have a high self-esteem problem. Now, he's not talking about just the mental ill. In fact, he's citing over 20 studies, just not one or two studies here and there. 20 studies, everything from 12-year-olds to adult professionals. Look what he says. Regardless of those involved, regardless of the experimental methods, the people's self-perceived superiority was present consistently. If given a teamwork task, the people saw themselves as more cooperative than others. If given a competitive task, they perceived themselves as more competitive. But people know they shouldn't act prideful, right? They know they shouldn't act the way that these surveys find out they really are. They know they should be humble. But how do they privately think inside their minds? Well, the SAT is given to millions of kids every year, right? A couple questions on there asking about their feelings about themselves relative to their peers. Guess what? Pretty much everyone thinks they're smarter and better than everyone else. I thought they just took an SAT. That kind of proved they weren't, didn't it? Yeah. How do you feel compared with other people your own age in certain areas of ability? Now, one of the manifestations or the results of this self-esteem movement has been grade inflation. In the U.S., between the late 1960s and by 2004, how many freshmen in college, had an A average in high school? It had gone up from 18% to 48%, almost 3 times higher, while their SAT scores had actually fallen. Well, we got to keep their self-esteem up. We can't give them C's. Can't tell them they're average. Okay, let's draw it out this way. There's a couple surveys done right here. People are to rate themselves in 3 categories, okay? How do people? Well, there's three possibilities. They rate themselves as either average, below average, or above average. I don't care which one of these two you want to use is considered as normal. If you think all three should be of equal size, about 33%, take the one on the left. That's fine. If you think, well, no, average means you're pretty much in the middle, and maybe there's 45% above you and 45% below you. Okay, consider that a normal. Okay? This is not a small survey, 829,000 students. First question, how do you rate yourself relative to everybody else in your leadership ability? You'll be tremendously pleased to know we got a lot of leaders out there today, folks. 70% are above average. Well, you may think, well, okay, maybe it should be half that, or maybe all the rest of them put themselves as below average. No, that's not what it was. Guess how many rated themselves as below average? 2. What's the difference between 2 and 70? 35 times difference? Next category, athletic ability. Now, this is one category guaranteed they should do better on. Why? Or at least the males should. I don't know about the females. Okay. When a male goes out and plays sports in high school and elementary school and all that kind of stuff, a lot of times teams are broken up. So 2 people will be chosen. They're kind of the captains. And each one gets a draft pick. Pick your first choice. Okay, I picked that person. Then the other person chooses. Okay, I picked that person. And the next one gets to choose again. I picked that person. Okay, you pick that. If you're picked up on the last round, you're not doing too good. So everyone knows where they score in sports as they grew up. At least the males do. Again, females don't waste as much of their time at this, right? Well, you'll be pleased to know we got a lot of athletes out there because 60% of them are above average. How many are below average? What's the difference between the two? 10 times difference. Yeah. Now, the category that I think just blew me away was this. They said, how do you rank your ability to get along with others relative to your peers? They were more specific on these categories. They said, how many of you think you're in the top 10%? So the top 10%, you see that little box up there. You'd expect the box to be about that big, right? The top 10%, who really are the top 10%, should say, yeah, I'm probably in the top 10%. Well, you'll be glad to know that we got a lot of people who have ability to get along with others out there. Why in the world do we have all this crime in the streets and all these protests and things of that nature? They're getting along with each other. 60% think they're in the top 10%. You think that's bad? They also ask them, do you think you're in the top 1%? 25% think they're in the top 1%. And if you think that's bad, how many thought they were just below average? Goose eggs. They studied criminals. After all, criminals got low self-esteem. That's what they were taught. With these particular doctors, they decided to study over 200 criminals. They couldn't find a single one with low self-esteem. They all had high self-esteem problems. Not a single one of them thought they were evil. Each thought they were basically a good person. But watch this. Basically a good person even while planning a crime. Wait a second, they've already been caught, put in jail, they're studying here, and haven't you learned? Guess not. Meanwhile, the police in Michigan, seeking a serial rapist, instructed the public to look out for a 30-something male with medium build and, you guessed it, low self-esteem. Is it easy to be humble? Bible doesn't think so. When you look at the qualities that elders are supposed to have in 1 Timothy 3:6, it says, not a novice. Why? Lest being puffed up with pride. Wait a second, everybody that becomes a Christian, they shouldn't have a trouble with pride whatsoever. Be careful. How about the Apostle Paul? He couldn't have had any trouble whatsoever with self-esteem or maybe being exalted. No problems whatsoever, right? What did he say in 2 Corinthians 12:7-10? And lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me. What did he think about that buffeting thing? Lest I be exalted above measure. He thought it was positive. For when I am weak, then I am strong. He relied on God. Now, there's a handout on the back table over there if you'd like to have some scriptures on humility and the fear of God. Ask yourself, how many books have you read in your entire life? How many articles have you read in your entire life that basically are the steps to the wrong place? Their conclusions and what they wanted you to believe wasn't going to lead you in any place that would be beneficial. We need to get off Satan's ladders. This positive image movement is the devil's way of getting men to praise men rather than praising God. The origin of this selfism is seen in the humanistic, naturalistic effort to make guilty people feel better. Their guilt should get them to change. But no, you need to feel good about it. No, you're not guilty. That's the way you were brought up or the way your circumstances were, or you're just poor. It's not you. You need to feel better about yourself. No, you're guilty of something. You need to change. God intends for sinners to be appropriately miserable in order to motivate them towards repentance. Isn't that what we call a conscience? They want to take away the guilty person's conscience? Yeah. The self-esteem movement is the devil's way of robbing men of hope, robbing them of happiness, robbing them of joy. When? Well, when others might mistreat them. If they're mistreated by someone else, can't they have joy? Not if you believe the world. You see, the world wants to teach the idea of conditional joy that says, I can never be happy. I can't feel good about myself as long as others do not all see the good and value that I possess. Value should be based upon how God values you. The mental health industry wants to make you a king on the throne of your life rather than denying yourself, dying to self, and putting Christ on as your king. Complaining. Have you ever thought that most, if not all, of the things that you complain about is due to you? In other words, you're acting like you deserve something better? We need to stop adding to the problem and be the solution. We need to change. Let's try an illustration. Here's an example. Wives, sometimes it may take a while to train your husband to pick up those dirty socks and get them in the proper place. So what is your response? Well, hopefully it's not this lady's response. He left his dirty socks by the bed again. I'll let him know that I deserve better than that from him. Now, she might not say it with that tone of voice, but perhaps her action sometimes essentially is saying that. What she's really saying is, I deserve more. That's definitely not humility. That's definitely not low self-esteem. Or perhaps this one, even worse. How can I guilt trip him into feeling so bad that he'll remember to pick him up next time and put him in the basket? Guilt trips? What does a guilt trip mean? I'm not responsible for my negative feelings, you are. That sounds like, well, I deserve better feelings. I want to feel better, so you change. Or, now I know no one ever fall into this one. If he loved me, he would remember to do this. Well, hopefully nobody would make the following statement like this. Well, that means he doesn't love me. And the Bible says the husband's supposed to love their wives. Therefore, I'm not going to show him respect until he shows me his love. Nobody's going to make that mistake, right? Well, a wife might not even ever have that thought. But sometimes does the action being taken, the pouting or the other type things, sometimes lead you to that's what's really going on? They show less respect until he does what they think he should. Does that sound like Jesus? He deserved to be treated better, didn't he? Yet he did what was best for others, not himself. Now, even though this wife was right about the socks, her thinking includes a problem of this idea of high self-esteem, thinking she deserves more. Husbands, you should put away the socks, okay? That could be part of your denying yourself. Get in the habit, okay? Help her avoid having the wrong attitude by the way you live with her. But guys, you're not off the hook, okay? We'll get to you in just a minute. Now, humility, if she was actually esteeming her husband higher than her present circumstances, she might say it this way: he left his dirty socks by the bed. I wonder if he just forgot. Or maybe he was in a hurry. You know, maybe when he gets back tonight, I'll just leave him there. He might see him and pick him up. Okay, that's fine. Or not. Maybe she'll say, you know, if he doesn't remember to pick him up tonight, how can I be gentle and remind him? Well, 2 Timothy chapter 2 says we're supposed to be gentle with people who aren't even Christians. Imagine how much more gentle we're supposed to be with our spouse. Or maybe she says this to herself. Wouldn't this be a nice, good response? Let me first ask myself, are my emotions the result of being humble? Am I esteeming him more than myself? Let me get the right attitude before I think of some way to communicate about the socks tonight. Husbands, you're not off the hook. I've heard this actually happen sometimes. Internally, he's sitting there saying to himself, I'm tired of these complaints. I think I'll go watch TV. A good sports game's on tonight. Or maybe he has a gentler response inside his mind. I wish she wouldn't get so upset. But even this husband's gentler response is often due to the fact that he does not want her to complain about him. Why? Why does he feel he deserves more? He's got too high a self-esteem of himself at that time. Why doesn't he take this opportunity to change his motives? He can't change her. Why can't he change himself? Change himself from high self-esteem, I deserve more, and simply do what's best for her. You see, esteeming others higher than yourself would lead to practically zero complaints, zero arguments, and zero hard feelings. Humble households have harmony, peace, safety, and security. Now, the good news is it doesn't even take both of you in the household. It doesn't require both of you at the same time. Oh, that's good. In fact, if just one of you at a time does this, strife, conflict, resentment, and hard feelings are gone. It is hard to be upset with someone when they are esteeming, present tense, they're esteeming you higher than themselves. So husbands, the next time your wife complains, and that isn't very often, I'm sure, use that as an opportunity to esteem her more than whatever you're doing, whatever you're thinking, whatever you think you deserve, esteem her more. Say to yourself, even her complaining is better than I deserve. Easy to say, hard to do. Her few complaints, have you ever thought this? Her few complaints can actually help you grow as a Christian. Why don't you thank her? I'm serious. Christians have dedicated themselves to changing their life, giving up their self-esteem, and turning over their lives and following Christ. Will you get rid of any high self-esteem, humble yourself, and follow Jesus? In fact, does Luke chapter 9, verse 23 sound like you got a choice? If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. The Bible has the power to change people's lives, to change their attitudes, the internals. Will you let it change you? See, Christians have looked inside, they've obeyed, they've changed, but sometimes the world's old ladders that the devil put up there, sometimes we step on those wrong ladders, don't we? Have you? Well, the Bible still says in Mark chapter 16 that he who believes and is baptized will be saved. If there's anyone in the audience or in the listening audience, hear, believe, repent, confess, yeah, you can't leave out baptism, can you? No. But that's not the end of things. It's just the beginning. That's when God adds you to the church, which is the same thing as Christ's body, as we see in Acts 2 and Ephesians 1. You're born again, but wait a second. You're supposed to deny yourself and take up your cross daily. There's only one way to heaven. There's only one ladder. And if we can help you get on your journey by praying for you or helping you obey the gospel, please come forward as we sing this invitation song.